Welcome back, viewers, to another episode of the Port of Corpus Christi Speaker Series, A Gateway to the Gulf. I'm your host, Sean Strawbridge, CEO of the Port of Corpus Christi. For today's episode, I have the privilege to speak with an esteemed leader in the global energy arena. And our conversation could not come at a better time as businesses emerge from the economic downturn caused by the pandemic and attempts to return to some level of normalcy. And while all of us in the business community are excited by the prospect of an economic rebound, we also recognize it will be coupled with an increased demand for energy, particularly from the oil and gas sector. As we realized over the last 18 months during the lockdown, energy-dependent technology will play an even larger role in our economy going forward, and it will be up to the leadership of people like my next guest to meet the corresponding energy demand in a sustainable manner that benefits everyone. Please join me in welcoming today's very special guest, Mike Sommers. Mike is the president and CEO of the American Petroleum Institute, the largest trade association representing all aspects of America's natural gas and oil industry. Prior to joining API, Mike headed the American Investment Council, representing the nation's leading private equity and growth capital firms and other business partners. He has also held critical leadership roles as Chief of Staff to House Speaker John Boehner and Strategic Advisor to President George W. Bush at the National Economic Council. Since his July 2018 appointment to the API helm, Mike has overseen the strategic realignment of API's priorities and advocacy efforts, including the adoption of the industry's solution-oriented position on climate change, the development of an industry-wide narrative to broaden the sector's base of support, and the increased utilization and visibility of API standards and safety programs. Welcome, Mike.
Sean, it's great to be with you.
Well, Mike, it's so good to see you again, my friend. I wish we could see each other in person, but certainly as we continue with some semblance of return to normalcy, we're certainly hearing about more of discussion about the need for energy transition, not only in the U.S., but globally. What's your perspective on this term, energy transition, and what do you think it means for API and its members?
Well, one thing we know, Sean, is that the world's going to continue to demand more oil and gas into the future. And we know that this industry has been transitioning for decades and decades over the course of the last 100 years. And this industry has been part of that transition. In fact, we witnessed a transition long ago when the world stopped using whale oil and started using kerosene for their lighting needs. So this is an industry that knows all about transitions. And I'm confident that as the world continues to transition to different kinds of fuels, oil and gas are going to be part of that transition. And we're excited about that. In fact, as we know, based on statistics, we expect that the world's going to be consuming about 50% more energy by the year 2050. And we expect that world population is going to go up 50% by 2050. The world's going to need more energy. And we expect that most of that energy is still going to come from oil and gas.
Mike, it's interesting as you reference the world and the global transition. We're heading into COP26 in a few months. And certainly in the wake of the recent release of the IPCC report on climate change, we will likely see a more engaged United States with other sovereignties in the climate change discussion at the forum. So from your perspective of the oil and gas industry, what are some of the issues that you'd like to see discussed at the upcoming summit?
Well, here at API and with our 600 plus member companies, we take the climate challenge seriously. In fact, earlier this year, we released a climate action framework, which is all about what this industry will do to tackle the climate challenge. And it's also what we think the government should do to also tackle the climate challenge. So part of our plan includes industry actions, things that the industry will do no matter what the government chooses to do from a policy perspective. But we also put forward some forward-looking policies that we think the government should pursue. Let me give you a couple examples of that. So first of all, we endorsed the federal regulation of methane, and we're working with the Environmental Protection Agency now on what that framework should look like. In addition to that, we think the Congress, along with the president and working with industry allies, should work on a carbon price policy where there would actually be a transparent economy-wide price on carbon as a way to provide the best way to limit carbon entering into our atmosphere. So we're working with Congress now, we're working with the administration now on what that kind of plan would look like, because we think it's the best way to tackle the full climate challenge. I will say that some of the proposals that have come out of this White House and Congress are concerning to us because it doesn't tackle the full scope of the climate challenge. They seem to be focused primarily just on energy. But as we know, this isn't just about energy. This is also about other aspects of the economy, which is why we've endorsed an economy-wide price on carbon.
You know, speaking about the Biden administration and certainly the economic recovery, you know, there are many, including the administration and on Capitol Hill, that are committed to an infrastructure package as well. And, you know, we're still waiting to see what that bill might end up looking like. So, you know, here at the Port of Corpus Christi, we're the largest energy export gateway in the United States. We're certainly eager to see more development, infrastructure development that will promulgate exports of American energy. What are your priorities when it comes to enhancing American infrastructure?
Well, look, so the Senate looks like they're going to pass the bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and we've worked with them on a number of the key provisions. So let me give you a couple of examples of areas where we found common ground with the United States Senate and this president. One example is the deployment of carbon capture, utilization, and storage technology. There is new money in this bipartisan infrastructure bill to advance CCUS. So we're very excited about that. They also put new money in the bill to advance hydrogen. That's another part that our climate action framework addresses as well. So we're very optimistic about what has been discussed so far. The one thing that's really lacking that we would have preferred to see in this bill, and we hope to get it enacted in other pieces of legislation going forward, is permitting reform. You and I both know that without permitting reform, none of these things that are promised in the bipartisan infrastructure package are actually going to get built. So we're concerned that with no permitting reform in this bill, that there are going to be big promises made, but promises can't be kept because of the red tape that exists within this current permitting process. From the oil and gas industry, we're not asking for new money for pipelines. What we're asking for is permitting reform that gives us the ability to actually build out the infrastructure that America needs to continue to be an energy leader.
You know, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, Mike, when it comes to permitting reform. You know, we here at the Port of Corpus Christi have to navigate permitting agencies like the United States Army Corps of Engineers and their regulatory side of their structure. And what's interesting, when we look at the amount of resources that's being appropriated to the Army Corps of Engineers, it's the same amount that's been appropriated to the regulatory side as was in 2008. So you're absolutely right. Without permits in hand, the opportunities to transition the energy markets and certainly to continue to enjoy the energy dominance and the energy resiliency that we have today won't persist. And if we don't take full advantage of those opportunities by having permitting reform, those opportunities will certainly pass us by. So I couldn't agree with you more. You know, and no one knows more than you or your members about the importance of the oil and gas sector when it comes to energy security and economic resiliency. So how can we as an industry convey the importance that it plays to those Main Street voters, everybody in our everyday lives, both here and abroad?
Yeah, I mean, this is an ongoing challenge, I think, for the industry to talk to real mainstream voters about the importance of this industry. You know, and I think a lot of times, Sean, we get lost in our own data. We know how important this industry is. The world consumes 100 million barrels of oil every single day. That only dropped to 81 million barrels a day during the worst part of this pandemic when we shut basically the entire world economy down. So you and I know, and many of your listeners know, about the importance of that this industry has and will continue to have, just based on what we expect consumer demand is going to be in the short term and in the long term. What I think we don't do a great job of is putting a great face on those stories. We need to communicate the way our opponents are communicating, with emotion. And we need to tell them what they would lose if this industry, this great American-born industry, what people would lose if this industry went away. And we at API, we try to do that every single day. And you can learn more about some of those activities that we have at api.org. Or in fact, you can learn more about our forward-looking approach on climate with the Climate Action Framework at api.org/climate.
You know, I don't think that most people fully appreciate how much hydrocarbons and fossil fuels play a role in the quality of their lives and the livelihoods that they enjoy. You know, we have hydrocarbons in everything from medical devices to medicines to mobile devices, footwear and apparel. It's not just in mobility. And so I couldn't agree with you more that, you know, we've got to protect the quality of that life that has made this country so great. And we've got to really craft that narrative so people understand it. So doing that, you know, I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball now and perhaps provide your perspective on what trends we might see in the oil and gas industry and certainly the larger energy sector as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I think you see with most of the API member companies, their key focus has been on lower carbon. And I think you're going to continue to see that trend. Of course, the 2019 major COVID year, pre-COVID year, was an opportunity for this industry to grow. We saw some, of course, retrenchment throughout COVID in 2020. We know that the consumers are demanding more energy, but at the same time, they're going to demand that energy is lower carbon. And I think that's the major trend that we're going to see over time within the oil and gas industry.
Well, Mike, you know, I know you're a busy guy, and certainly, you know, taking time out of your day to share your perspective on energy transition, on climate change, and certainly growing demand for energy and energy exports, you know, along with critical infrastructure, and how all of that comes together, playing a vital role, not only for our economy, but certainly emerging economies. It's certainly something that we appreciate you just taking the time out of your busy schedule to share some of your thoughts with us today.
Sean, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity as always. And I hope to have an opportunity to come see you in Corpus sometime soon.
We'd love to have you, Mike. Come on down. The water's warm. I'd also like to thank you, our viewers, for tuning in to this episode of A Gateway to the Gulf. Please consider subscribing to the Port of Corpus Christi's YouTube channel to catch new episodes, and keep your eye out for the upcoming Texas Energy Day announcements in Washington, D.C. in October. See you next time.